Welcome to the Soul of Menopause, where we're rewriting the narrative of this transformative journey. From the first hormonal whispers of perimenopause, through menopause and into postmenopause, we're challenging the traditional medical approach that often reduces women's experiences to a set of symptoms. This transition isn't about what we're losing, but who we're becoming. I'm Dr. Kaye Corpus, and this is the Soul of Menopause.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the second season of our podcast, The Soul of Menopause, where we dive deep into the real stories, science, and soul of what it means to move through midlife as a woman. I'm your host, Dr. Kaye Corpus, and today we're venturing into the world of therapeutic movement and fascia, a topic that doesn't get nearly enough airtime, but could change the way you feel in your body during menopause. My guest today is Lisa Loiseau, a movement therapist and educator whose work bridges nervous system education, myofascial release, and somatic practice. Lisa has spent years helping people reconnect with their bodies, find relief from pain, and cultivate resilience, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically too. She's about to present at the Fascia Research Congress, where she'll be sharing her unique approach to integrating mind, body, and movement. While menopause isn't her formal specialty, Lisa's insights into how we hold stress, trauma, and emotion in the body offer powerful tools for anyone navigating big transitions. Today, we'll explore how gentle movement and self-awareness can support you through the ups and downs of menopause, why fascia matters for hormonal health, and how tuning into your body's wisdom can spark healing and hope. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let's welcome Lisa to the Soul of Menopause. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, it's so great to connect with you again. So some of our audience may remember our first podcast, which was great. So excited to have you back again. And we had
Thank
a conversation.
you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we had a conversation maybe a little bit ago, a month or so ago, when we were just talking about even pain and menopause and why that may have happened. I really wanted to pick your brain on that, of why potentially that could happen. So I had this theory, and this happened to me also, of why am I in pain? Like, what is happening? And in my mind, it just felt like, I've been doing a lot of work, internal work, physical work, myofascial release, and all of the inner work for a long time. And it didn't make sense to me why I was still experiencing generalized pain. But what came to me one day was like, maybe you're just releasing all this stuff and it's sort of floating around and just getting trapped in your tissues and in your fascia, which was really interesting to me. And I had this image of like a drain or a trap or a sponge that was just like accumulating a lot of the stuff over the years, like the first 50 part of our lives. And that's really what I find that menopause is transition, is going into more authenticity. Like, how do we shift from no longer to not yet? We're sort of in this middle, that in between, that liminal phase. And I think it's a lot of like rewiring, detoxification, and, even deconstruction of who we were, and I see that a lot in the physical tissue. And then this reconstruction into that new butterfly. We're in that cocoon phase.
Yeah, when you just said about the drain, I thought about even like the lymphatic system, the collection of all those years, as you had mentioned, decades of stuff not being released and not being spoken, not being moved out, whatever that is. I have hunches as to why some people experience pain. I think it would be different with each person. So it wouldn't necessarily be the same reason per se of pain, but it could be the readiness. Sometimes pain will come up and out. Or like, I got to listen to this now. Or was there some numbness, and that numbness is beginning to resolve, and the pain is now the forefront versus the numbness? Readiness could come from, at some point, if you have children are older, and they rely a bit less on you. So now there's more time for you or for me or for the person experiencing the pain during that time of menopause. Those are some of the things that came to mind.
Lisa, I think that was it, because we were talking about, and I see this in a lot of the women that come to me, is that even though you're not quite empty nested, they're, our kids like mine are 15 and 18. They don't need me quite as much. They can figure out their own things. And there's just a lot of, like, in my house right now, there's nothing except my dog. And I'm just going, there's a lot of space here, a lot of, and all the stuff starts to come up. Whereas before I was like hustling all over the place and busy. I didn't have time to feel much of anything and just go.
Yeah, that just made me think of an analogy. So I'm sure most listeners can relate to this. You're in your home and all of a sudden you hear silence. It was the sound of the refrigerator stopping. And you almost didn't realize the sound until it turned off. So that feels very relatable to that situation, is all of these things are going on beneath the surface, but we have a lot of distractions, especially in the modern day life that we live. And once those start peeling away, sometimes we can't unhear or unfeel the pain that we're experiencing. And pain is an opportunity, to listen.
I was just about to ask you, how do you view pain? Is it a pathology, or how do you view pain?
Yes, I view it as an opportunity to press in and lean in. And it's not always physical pain. It could be emotional pain, frustration, some pain point. And that's, again, how my pain model developed. I started recognizing there is this pattern of experiences that people are having, and it goes in the category of pain. It's frustrating, it's hard, but we can use that pain, put something to practice. For me, I use the pain model, and there's other tools that I use. And then from that point, we can make progress. So from that pain point, we can shift into progress.
So we talked about your pain model, and our audience can reference our podcast before, but could you briefly tell us, to remind us, what the pain model is?
Sure. It's an acronym that grew out of the way I was teaching. I noticed that I was teaching in a rhythm. And what would happen is we would do self-myofascial release practices, which often bring up an illicit pain or tenderness. So if I'm working in this area, like, ooh, that's uncomfortable, that gives me an opportunity to practice the pain model, and it spells out pain. So the P is pausing and being present. And in that pause, what are you aware of? Like for right now, I'm simply doing this, and I started noticing a little extra tension in my feet. So I'm aware of tension in my feet. And then what am I going to do about it? I might implement a change. I'm going to uncross my feet, shift my weight a little bit. For some reason, I felt the impulse to swallow, and that's the I, impulse, implement. And then the N is based on neuroplasticity. You're going to create new pathways, new ways of moving, new grooves, and that's the basis of neuroplasticity. So presence, awareness, impulse, and neuroplasticity. Impulse and also implement.
Wonderful. So could you also break down what fascia is for our listener?
Yes. So fascia is incredibly amazing. And I'm going to start with a visual. So if I gave you an orange and asked you to peel the layer of the orange, that top layer, you would see underneath it white. That would be the fascia of the orange. And then if I ask you to take out one slice and we're looking at that one little sliver, you would see white. It looks like it's cells. That is also the fascia. So the fascia in this case gives it its shape, its form. Without it, it wouldn't be an orange. It would just be juice. So of course, we're much more complex than an orange. So our fascia gives us shape, form, gives us structure that allows us to move freely or not. So if this was tight fascia, I couldn't bring my arm up. It allows us to get power. It actually gives us the push and power in our performance and athletics or for the householder, if we need to lift, push, or pull, the fascia is involved with force and power as well. It also, since I have studied the nervous system, I really began to understand the implementation of fascia and nervous system work because they communicate. It's bi-directional. The fascial tone gives the nervous system input, and the nervous system state, whether if we're in a state of activation, fight or flight, or if we're a bit, down and depressed and freezy, that's the nervous system state. That will inform the fascia. So that's what I'm looking forward to learning more about at the Fascia Congress, because there's been some research done and understanding. I don't want to say which one's more important, but what comes first? Which one do you care for first? I see it right now as they walk alongside of each other, and it's very much a blend. But again, I'm looking forward to learning more at the Congress.
I agree with you there that they go hand in hand. So why do you think this matters, particularly with women in midlife? And what are your thoughts with that around hormones or lack thereof?
There's so many ways I can answer this. The first thought that I had is the number of years that if you haven't dealt with it for 40 to 50 years, now you almost have to deal with it. Things have become more crystallized. So there's a fluid it's not quite as liquid as water, but hyaluronic acid is between all of the fascial layers. And that can become crystallized through lack of movement, through surgeries, through accidents and trauma. And if that's not fluid, things don't move smoothly. So I think the length of time that it hasn't been addressed is a key piece in there. Also, this is where I look forward to learning more. The estrogen levels decline with age. So that impacts the fascia. Again, since I'm not an expert in hormonal health, I look forward to learning a bit more about how that all interplays.
You mentioned something earlier about the lymph. And so I personally think, that had helped shift the pain for me. That was just in the last maybe couple of months. So the lymph wasn't on my radar. Fascia was on my radar for a long time. And I don't know, for some reason, of course, in medical school, I knew about the lymph, and why this is not talked about in primary care, and to do even lymphatic drainage is insane, because once I started doing it, I was like, it almost felt like that last piece. So when I was saying like, okay, so I've done all this work to release this, now it has to freaking get out of my body. And the lymph was the way that it did. And it almost reminded me of that phase 2 of liver detoxification, where, you have that phase 1, you need that phase 2 reaction to get phase 2 process to get it actually out of the body, and it was just recirculating basically over and over again. So it didn't matter how much I dislodged it emotionally, physically, or whatever, it was still recirculating, and that was causing stagnation of the toxins in the fluid, which was causing the inflammation, which was causing the pain. Duh. It was like,
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you had to clear your dreams.
Exactly. And it's our system. And it's like, so I started doing this daily. I work like my 7 major ones. Yes. All of that. My face I do with my like lymph. I don't know. Have you heard of these lymph brushes, lymphatic brushes?
I have one, but I do them with my hands just because I have so many tools. So I have to be careful how many tools I use.
Exactly. So I do both also, and I'm obsessed. So I do it twice. But you know what the thing is? It's not even just getting the fluid, or that stagnation, that toxins. To me, it's a very self-loving practice of knowing where your body is in space. Like I can feel where I'm retaining fluid. Right and left is different. Where I'm holding it maybe in my belly. But I know every centimeter of my structure and of my body. And I think I actually love that, instead of like being always in my head and disconnected from where my body is in space. Do you know what I mean? And and it just brings me back to myself. So I love it as a self-care practice. I love it as a detoxification practice daily. And what comes in must go out. And I don't have the pain anymore. It's like gone. It's so crazy.
It's wonderful be at this age of being pain-free. I feel the same. I don't have any pain. I'm 55 years old. Now, that's not to say I don't wake up some days with pain, but I let that be my teacher and my guide. And what do I need to do about it and make those changes? Sometimes I'm like, okay, that was a little too much at the gym or too much hiking or whatever that is. Something like that can creep up. But I do not live in chronic pain. And yeah, it feels good to say that, and how helpful that is for those who work with you to hear it. It's hopeful that we're at the age that we are and we can live pain-free or pretty close to pain-free. It's not to say we don't have our issues, right? Because we're human. The pain's not.
Exactly. So women going through menopause who report feeling stuck in their bodies, physically or emotionally, tell us more about your approach on how you would approach someone like that in your practice from a movement perspective.
Yeah, if I was working with someone one-on-one and they were physically telling me that they were stuck, I would ask them, a few questions so it would feel like it's the thought process, but very quickly get them into their physical body. What feels stuck? Where is it stuck? What would it be like to move that stuck part? And do things like if it feels so stuck, maybe they're a little bit on the freeze end of their nervous system state. Caution, to be a little cautious there because you don't want anybody to shut down completely. We can work on trying to lift that freeze. Maybe they need a little bit of activation, a little bit of gentle movement to get that space to open up. But what I have to remember, if somebody feels stuck and there's freeze or shutdown, there is always sympathetic, the high activation underneath that surface. So somewhere along the line, when there's capacity, when they have a wider window of tolerance, you would start doing things that were maybe a little bit bigger. But I always begin things slowly, drip by drip, titrated in a slow, processed way.
Lisa, so what do you feel about medications for pain? Where's the place for that? Because I find a lot of people come in like, I have pain, I need to get rid of it, which, yes, I mean, nobody wants to live in that. So how would you approach somebody? Is there like sort of this acute phase that we have to kind of manage the pain so that this deeper work can actually be done? Or how does that work for you?
That's a really good question. Pain medication actually doesn't come up a whole lot for me in the work I'm doing. At least my clients are not asking me, should I take pain medication or not? What I have worked with people on is more like antidepressants. They ask me about those types of questions. That comes up more than pain medication. If it is, it's usually like I'm dealing with this headache. Should I take a Tylenol or is this the time for me to be with it? And just helping them sort. So it's definitely pain medication, but nothing on an ongoing basis. It would be more as needed. Admittedly, if I'm needing to be somewhere and I need to be on and I don't have time to process a headache, because that has been my go-to pain, this area here, if I'm experiencing one, I will take acetaminophen because if I have to get rid of it immediately. It's not my preferred, but sometimes we have to choose when we're going to be with it, or maybe I have to compartmentalize it. That is not to say I ignore it. I remember it, and then at my soonest convenience, I might need to do a little bit of work. I might need to get, a soft, cushy ball and press into that space, or what's the pain? What's the message that this headache is telling me? Typically, it's activation.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that because I think sometimes we shame ourselves of like, oh, I'm not doing it all naturally, or you know what I mean, or the other way around. And so we give ourselves this permission to, yes, like my need right now is to get that. That's what I meant by that acute phase, like get it under control. And when I do have the time to do that, go and explore it, because I think people sometimes live on polar opposites. It's either one or the other. And that both gives us a lot of it. That in itself can downregulate the nervous system, right?
And I also think for me, if I'm noticing that there's been a little bit of a headache pattern, it's time for me to see my myofascial release practitioner. And I would, during our conversation before getting on the massage table, I'm saying I've been experiencing this headache, to have her be aware of where my tension has been. That may not be where she starts the work, though, because that may be the landing place. Maybe it's my hips or my knees. Maybe it's, something in my, diaphragm. It's not always completely clear to me right away. I have to spend time in it.
That's the beauty of actually going to myofascial release practitioners. It's like giving you that feedback. I mean, it's so trippy that, like, I just realized that something in my left calf was causing, pain in my pelvis, or shifts in my pelvis, which is causing pain in my neck. So, so it's just so interesting and curious, and I feel like when you keep doing the work, it's cumulative. You keep peeling those layers and discovering more and more about who you are and what your reservoir is so deep, and great work. Yeah.
Yes, and it reminds me of that thought of you can't, unlearn something you learn or unsee something that you see. So once you have become aware of the things that you've become aware of, you just add that next layer of awareness the next time.
So, Lisa, you mentioned integrating the nervous system education into your work. So tell us why that's important, and especially for women who might be dealing with increased anxiety and sleep issues or mood swings, etc., during menopause.
Sure. I think I'll share a piece of my story to help bring the example a bit more. Maybe it'll be relatable. So I hit a point where I had to see a therapist, and I hit talk therapy really hard. Like I'm a people pleaser and a rule follower. So I went twice a week. I was journal writing. I was like, I got to get this out. Let's rip it off, get it out. But what happened is my system revolted. I was not ready. I was not titrating. I wasn't slow. I wasn't going slow enough for my system. I didn't have the capacity to process all of that. So unfortunately for me, it was a skin flare where my face was pretty bad. And I knew I had to slow down, and instinctively, I knew that I needed a completely different way, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I found a support group, and in that support group, the facilitator started mentioning nervous system, survival mode. And I was like, I need to learn more about that. I had a little shame around that, thinking I should have known, but I don't really feel that so much anymore. But I did. I dug right into nervous system. I did a Google search, nervous system trauma care, and I found the work that I fell into, which is the work of Irene Lyon. And I've done all of her, I started with the free resources, and then I did our smaller program, the bigger program, and I just finished the mentorship with 32 other, we're called scientuitive practitioners in training. So we just did that, and that was a pretty deep dive. And that's been since 2018, maybe even 2017. So it's been a long time since I've been educating myself in nervous system health. And there's still so much to learn, even though I'm looking at it behind me here, the nervous system, even though by design, that's generally what all of our nervous systems look like. The way they present, turn on, turn up, activate, deactivate is so very different based on how we were brought up, what our life experiences have been like. All of those variables make it very difficult to say this is exactly what you're going to see. So it's so nuanced, and so unique to each individual. Even for the 32 of us, when we did our homework, we would do a little write-up and reading how everybody responded to that prompt. Yeah, there were some common threads, but I was like, wow, that is a different response. And wow, that's another different response to the same prompt. That's where I was reminded this is a big task to say, I know the nervous system, because every person who enters, whether they come into me in person or I see them online, will be very different. The most important thing is I need to get to know me and attune to myself, so that if something is going on in front of me, I can be aware that this is me, that is them, and we can take it from there.
That's beautiful. So in the ideal world of practicing clinical medicine, how do you feel all of these pieces work together with say, for instance, cognitive therapy or talk therapy, and then the somatic work, or even functional medicine? And I do refer out to therapists, mainly somatic therapists and myofascial release therapists, now lymph drainage therapists. I mean, it's a lot for one person to be doing and spending a lot of money on all of.
That's so true.
So how do you feel? And I love the word that you used, is titration. And I think a lot of people who come into the practice is just, and everybody, like, we want also the biggest bang for our buck, that if you're going to spend a lot of money, like, what is really going to work? How would you prioritize it, or how would you integrate all of the work that's out there? And it is, I'm asking this more from also what I see in my practice and from my own experience. And when we do our work on ourselves, it could just be what's available to us at this time, and once we start peeling the layers, we add like another modality. Do you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily do everything at one time. So maybe even from your own experience, how you've approached.
I would say from my own experience and from the individuals I work with who would be in the end of more in the overwhelmed and anxiety, that less is more, that you want to start with less modalities and begin to add them in. Because if you're starting too much too quickly, that system that's already overwhelmed can get, shut down. And it's great that we have shut down, because there's times that are imminent, but usually in those situations it's not. And we don't really want to live in that state of freeze or shut down, because the system cannot heal in that state. It can't learn. It's difficult to connect. We certainly don't feel safe in those situations. So I would say modalities added slowly. Some of the modalities that I have referred out, I work in the location in this building. There's sound therapy and your more general massage. There's Tai Chi classes. There's a yoga class. So there's a variety of types of classes. And sometimes you'll get a sense if somebody talks about music or they like rhythm. I would, say maybe you would want to go check out the sound room that's over here. And if they're really interested in the musical instruments over there, that would probably be someone who would benefit from taking either a one-on-one sound therapy or the groups that are here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And asking.
And there's a lot of interest in the sound. Sound it's beautiful. I've done a few myself. I even had a private one with the bowls on my body. Oh my goodness, it was so beautiful. There are a few sounds that can be pretty activating, but again, just being able to be with that is really interesting, and not analyze it. Like, why is that so activating? Just kind of be with, that, sometimes I'll even go, like, it makes me have a response. Most of the time I feel, pretty good.
So it is part of that attunement to self and awareness of self. This, sense of like where you are, and getting feedback from yourself of like, how's this feeling in my body? Am I ready for the next step or et cetera. It's a lot of
Ready for the next step.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's something I think really.
Also being aware of how much support individuals have, what is their support system? Because that's really big. If somebody were to come in and home life is not the safest place for them, it may be difficult to start much of anything because they might not have much carryover. So if it's a situation that they need to get out of, sometimes that's the first step. They need to get out of that harmful situation first. It's almost like clearing the drain so that everything can go through.
The way that I sort of explain it too, and sometimes, where the functional piece comes in, it's like, it's that Maslow's hierarchy of need. And so food, shelter, clothing, but it's almost like you need to sleep, you need to nourish, and you need to poop. So let's maybe work on those levels, like from a very physical, tangible perspective. And then eventually, that'll help support the body when you are releasing a lot of, potential traumas and stresses from the body, right? Because, yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So,
I do talk to my students that it just reminded me of the idea of needing to practice to relax. Like relaxation doesn't come natural to many people. Of course, safety is involved with that. But even if somebody felt safe in their body or safe enough because we have a connection and there's an emotional connection and there's attunement, even if that safety is there, and they haven't been practicing just laying still, relaxing is very difficult. So I do offer like mini relaxation sessions just to get into the habit of relaxing.
that's so, so important. So, hormones do impact so many systems in the body, including our fascia. Do you notice differences in how women in perimenopause and menopause um, respond to movement and body work compared to premenopausal women, per se?
Well, most of the individuals I see would be 45 and over, probably even older than that. So they are definitely in the menopause, postmenopausal category. I don't know if I could speak to that for sure, if I've noticed differences in movement. I mean, I notice differences in movement across people, and sometimes I'll have a hunch as to why somebody may be having a challenge with movement. A lot of times, like if it's in the shoulders, for example, it can come out of, a rounded forward head posture, and then the shoulder doesn't move because we have, tightness in the front, for example. So sometimes I can get hunches as to why people aren't moving well. And then if it's, there's other reasons of movement blocks. It could be people don't know what to do. They're lacking interest, or maybe it's resources. So there's so many different reasons why people aren't moving.
One thing I do see too is that around this time, this transition, we can't move. We don't want to move or can move the way that we did when we were 20 years younger. And that doesn't have anything to do with us getting old. I mean, it could be some of the things that you're saying. We're bored of that movement. Your body needs a kind of different movement pattern, and this phase is such a opportunity, like you said, to rediscover how your body wants to move again. And so I've been practicing yoga for more than 25 years, and I stepped away from it for 3 or 4 years, like did not even get on my mat. And I was a teacher. I owned a studio, had a yoga school, whatever. I just kind of like, and I just, and that was only what I was doing for 25 years, And I just thought like over it. Then I went into Pilates, which I felt like my body needed. And I just really went back on the mat maybe a few weeks ago. And it was such a different experience because I definitely don't move like I did. I'm not interested in doing the big back bends or the handstands or the crazy things that I used to do on the mat. And I love the slower classes or even the deep rest classes, whereas before I was like, I'm not going to do those classes. Those are boring, And so it's not that we are getting older and we can't move that way. I think it's just how we just we choose to move in our lives, which is very mindful, very everything, matters. Every movement matters, and it's much more integrated for me. And I can't even imagine doing a vinyasa class right now because I can't breathe. I can't get the full deep breaths that I want to get.
I'm thinking like what it sounds like you may be experiencing is less following the teacher and more following you. You're the guide. And that's probably a big difference. Whereas back, when you did it 25 years ago, I did it where I tried to match the teacher. That's not authentic.
Well, I was
that's hard to do.
The teacher, so I would do, I wouldn't disrupt the class, but I would do sort of like a child's pose if there was a down dog or something, or add a little twist. I wouldn't try to disrupt the class, but the teacher would go, okay, everybody stop what they're doing and let's do what Kaye's doing right now. It was like, I know.
I love it. You get a role model you are? Yeah.
So that's kind of stepping into that crone phase, and I'm just going to tie it back to menopause. It's just like, do you, boo? Like, do you, and
yes, you do.
You just do that. And then it's really inspiring to other people, because when you're really into what you're doing, what's right for your body, it can inspire, those around you to do that too. Not that you have to do that, but that's sort of the end product of what happens when you do that.
And we hear that phrase, listen to your body. And I think the general population doesn't even really know what that means or how to go about doing it. But it sounds like you're doing it. I know I do my best to do it. And that's some of the practices I teach is listening to those cues so that you know how to respond to what your body needs. And the beautiful thing is when we listen and respond, our body thanks us, and it now softens or expands or lessens in its tension or pain responses. So that's a neat thing that happens. That's a great byproduct to listening. It almost reminds me of a relationship. Like if you're not listening to your partner, to your friend, it might be difficult to go further in that. But if you listen, you can take that next step. And that's kind of what our body does. It's like that relationship with self.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. And that, and there's a lot of pressure for people, and women in particular, to power through that discomfort. That's what we've been doing for 50 years or 40 years. It's just like, I'm good, I'm fine. Or it's just like, no, figuring it out somehow and not attending to the fatigue or the pain or discomfort, right? And so what you teach is so beautiful because it's tune into your body and be honest instead of ignoring it, because we do stuff that stuff down and ignore it.
And you stuff that stuff.
Yeah, stuff that stuff. So having that.
And something's going to come up. Because something, and it's going to come up, it's going to come out, and it's going to be some dis-ease, some autoimmune condition, some anxiousness. It has to go somewhere. It's got its own energy.
Thank you so much. So how can we find you? How can we work with you and see all the cool things that are coming up in your orbit?
Yeah. So my website is Move Well with Lisa. I'm also on Instagram, Lisa Loiseau. And my website is in the midst of an update as I'm just opening up the doors to some online offerings. Up until just a few short weeks ago, I was in person only here in this space, in a studio space, which I will continue to do. I see groups online as well. Sometimes it'll be a staff meeting. They want to add something fun and supportive for their staff. So I see quite a few different types of individuals and groups.
That's amazing. I'm so happy you're doing this work. I think it's really innovative, it's smart, intelligent, and it's authentic to you. And I know a lot of people have benefited and will continue to benefit from your work in the world. So thank you so much.
Today's conversation is just one thread in the larger tapestry of our shared experience. Help us spread the word. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, rate us on your favorite podcast platform, or tag us on social media. We're at Corpus MD, and we want to build a community that transforms how we understand this incredible life stage. Find more resources and connect with us at kcorpusmd.com. Trust your body, embrace your wisdom. I'm Dr. Kaye, and this is the Soul of Medicine podcast.